slash YouTube webinar slash general hangout between me and Mohsin. That's the gentleman that you can see on the screen right now. Oh, I can add his name on. I can actually add my name on as well. Let me do that so that you guys don't get confused. Fantastic. So you have me and Mohsin. And today, inshallah, we're going to be talking lots about the various different side incomes someone can make that actually work and can actually make you some money during the whole coronavirus pandemic. And I know that this is this is a period of time where people, I think, are going to be really, really struggling, and it might not even be fully apparent to us all yet how much more there is going to be down the pipeline. But I think it's not going to get better before it gets worse. I think we're going to see worse before it gets better. Mohsin, what are your thoughts on this whole topic?
Yeah, Assalamualaikum everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Thanks for joining us, first of all. It's an interesting one. I mean, I think, everyone's heard all the doom and gloom, and we've all been through it over the last 6 months or so. My high-level thoughts are that we've kind of had the cracks papered over a little bit with the whole furlough scheme and all that kind of stuff. And now, obviously, particularly in the UK, but I'm sure the same applies worldwide as well. Governments are trying to basically wean the economy off those temporary measures, and we've already seen massive names like Boots and other massive companies who've been particularly badly affected, laying off people in the thousands. And that, I think, is just the start, because those big corporates tend to make decisions fast and early for redundancies at least. But remember that the backbone of the economy is SMEs. These small businesses who might not necessarily have all the information to hand right now to be able to make those decisions. So unfortunately, I think it's just one of those realities that we have to face. These are probably once in a lifetime situations that we'll look back on when we're a lot older. And unfortunately, I think it's going to mean lots of economic downturn, lots of layoffs and things like that. And I think that if you accept that as a reality and you accept that we can do things in advance to prepare for that, then inshallah, with Allah's help, we can mitigate that as much as possible.
Here. And so, guys, what we're going to do is try and add a lot of value over the next hour or so on this topic. We're going to have 7 different ideas that we have for side incomes that actually work for people. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about high-level principles that I think really underpin the whole area of side incomes. And Mohsin, great to hear your thoughts on this as well. But for me, the very first one is to go for the simple stuff first. And what I mean by that is that people who when you go for a side income, this is necessarily quite an entrepreneurial step that you're taking. And for many people, being entrepreneurial and coming up with your own kind of business of sorts will be the first time that you're doing that. And so, you might not necessarily have the experience there to fall back on. And you might think that what I need to do as a business is something cool or something that I thought of that I might do one day as a kid. When I was a kid, I thought I might do that one day, or something that I've seen on, TV, or one of my friends did it quite successfully, and not go for the simple stuff that you can do. And to give you a really concrete example of this, and I'm not sure, I'll have to get my dad's forgiveness after this, but he's a surgeon, and he loves dreaming up all sorts of ideas to do businesses with. And I've always said to him that, why don't you go for a circumcision clinic, or because he's a urologist, or why don't you go for some kind of like surgical kind of thing that you can do on the side, which is really easy and you're well established there. But I think for him, the business aspect is much more, it's a little bit about having some fun as well. But that would be a classic example of going for the simple stuff that's really just in front of your face first, and starting from there and scaling up. Mohsin, what other overarching principles do you think are really important for this topic?
Yeah, I think one of the things that people miss a lot is that these things take time, and to be honest, we don't. We only need to look at ourselves, right? We started IFG not really knowing what it was going to become, and this was back in 2015, and we were just kind of writing, and things just kind of snowball. And I think that's one lesson, particularly for anyone watching that's quite young. If you're kind of like 20s to 30s, I think you kind of miss this point as well. And it's something that I think we've really realized as well over the last few years, that actually the more time you just put into something, the more actually happens, as long as you're particularly consistent with the effort that you're putting in there. So I think that would be my thought here, that just understand that you need to be consistent about these things, and you need to give it the time. There's a famous graphic, which I'll try and relay as best I can, which is about there's that point where you're just about to give up, and if you'd have just carried on just a little bit more, that was the point of success. So it's weighing up really, versus carrying on and putting good effort into something that just isn't going to work. That's also a judgment call that you have to make.
Agreed completely. And I guess the final thing before we actually dive into the kind of strategies that we can be deploying is make sure that you are surrounding yourself with good people, successful people, and you get really good at where you take your information from. And it's, in a way, it's similar to where you take your Islamic knowledge from, or who you turn to for fatwa, right? You don't want to be taking it from some Tom, Dick, and Harry. You want to be taking it from someone who has experience in this area, who you trust, and has actually successfully done it. And by that, what I'm kind of, I guess, covertly saying is, please just don't fall for the scams of people selling get rich quick schemes online, MLM schemes. You can sit at home and you've got a great business, and you just give us £500 or £1,000, and after that it'll be plain sailing. Just please just watch out for that. People like that who are selling stuff like that are preying on people's vulnerability, and it really isn't something that a savvy Muslim entrepreneur, frankly, trying to set up a side income, should be falling foul of if they are aware of it. So with that, perhaps we dive in and get into these side incomes. So we've come up with 7 different strategies. Or is it 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 different strategies. So the first thing to say is that there are a whole load of strategies that are slightly stale now. So things like rent to rent was a strategy that was very popular, and people did quite well from it for a number of years. And so for people who aren't familiar with rent to rent, it's this concept of renting a property and then subletting that down to individual people. That perhaps you rent a house and you sublet the different rooms out to the different people, and you make a profit on the basis of that, because individual rooms might rent out for a higher price, and overall you're going to get a profit relative to the rent you are paying. So you might pay £2,000 for a house, but overall you make £3,000 from letting out the rooms. And that's a kind of easy way of making some money without necessarily putting down a lot of money in cash. That was, and continues to be in some places, quite a successful strategy. The reason why we're a bit wary of it right now is for a few reasons. Firstly, because with coronavirus, I think landlords and estate agents are particularly sensitive around who they give their properties to, and they want to just make sure that it's as stable as possible. Landlords and estate agents are going through a lot of hard times right now as well. And with areas like London and Manchester and Birmingham, where this kind of strategy is particularly effective, because you have the potential to do that, the house thing, and rent out the rooms, because house prices are so high and rents are so high. Because there is such a dense concentration in a few cities where the strategy can work, estate agents have just been flooded with people trying it on with them, and landlords don't like it, estate agents don't like it. So to actually get yourself a property where this works is a bit tricky these days. And I think, from the conversations I've had with people who tried it, it's proven to be a little bit of a kind of fool's errand for them. So I would stay away from probably things like that at the current moment in time. But there are things that I think would be really, really strong alternatives to consider. So why don't we consider one of the really cool ones first, which is buying yourself a small business. And Sheikh al-Islam Muhsin Patel, who's sat across the screen from me, is one of the pioneers in IFG circles of this whole strategy. Mohsin, over to you. What have you been up to, and how can people get into this whole space?
Yeah, so I mean, small businesses isn't something that immediately comes to mind, but we thought it'd be really useful to share, what we've been kind of learning over the last couple of years on small businesses. And to give you some context, small businesses are the kinds of things that they're not very glamorous, to be honest with you. They're often set up in industrial parks around the country, or it's a kind of mom and pop type thing where they've got the stock in the garage or in a spare bedroom, and they're selling stuff on a website. Pretty small time stuff. But actually, when you look through it, you realize that there are some very nice, very successful, and in many cases, very, very profitable businesses that are up and down the country, often hidden away in pockets that you wouldn't necessarily even think about. And the beauty with these small businesses is that because they are owner managed, meaning the people who kind of founded it and run it on a day-to-day, they are the people that are running it on a day-to-day basis. So we're not talking about big corporations with employees. We're talking very much about mom and pop type businesses. The beauty with them is that things happen to these people, and not in a bad way, but they retire, they get bored of their business after 20 years of doing it, or they need to get their hands on some cash, or unfortunately some people do fall ill and things like that. And what that means is that there is a market for these small businesses, because these guys, they want to they don't just want to close it down. If you've spent 20 years building up a business that is trading under a website, and you are able to get it to a point where it's making, I don't know, £50,000 in profit a year, you don't just want to shut that down overnight. You want to realize some of the value of you having built up that name and that brand, and B, more kind of on the emotional side, you want to then pass that business on and sell it to somebody that's actually going to do something decent with it and carry on the good name that you have built up. And in that particular small business market, it's a strange sort of market because it lends itself really well to people like you and me, because these businesses, they're not big enough for big institutional players or investors, because they don't want to get their hands dirty running a business, and at this, so it's far too small for them, but at the same time it's too big probably for just every Tom, Dick and Harry to actually go and acquire these businesses. So it's in this sweet spot where if you are somebody with the confidence to run your own business, the capital to actually buy some of these things, and I'll talk a bit more about capital shortly, then you can bag yourself a really, really good deal. My experience of the market is that because these sellers are effectively distressed sellers, they really want to get rid of their businesses, and they're motivated to get rid of them. You can actually pick up these businesses at 3 times net profit, 2 times net profit, even perhaps 1 times net profit, meaning that you recoup your investment within 1, 2, or 3 years, depending on the multiple that you buy. So, for example, for a business that's making £50,000 net profit, you might be able to pick it up for 100 grand, or even 75 grand if you're lucky, or 50 grand if you're even luckier. And the point is that when you think about that in pure investment terms, that's a great investment because you're recouping your money in a very short space of time. But I think crucially, for the purposes of this webinar, it's also about protection, because what you're doing effectively is taking away your reliance on your job as an income stream and kind of putting it in your control. You will be acquiring something that is running, that is operational, that's getting orders every day, and you can then obviously grow that business as much as your capacity will allow. And in terms of the capital outlay for these things, depending on the person, what I always say to people is that every deal is just a product of its circumstances. If I'm selling my business, which is making 50,000 net profit, and I'm in a strong position because I don't need to sell, I've got, I'm perfectly fine running it, then I will probably bargain quite hard. I'll probably hold out for 150k. But if I'm moving to Australia in 2 months, and I want this off my hands, frankly, I'll probably take 75k if you are serious about it. So there are some really, really good deals to be had. And you can search online for kind of small businesses for sale. There's a lot of work to do in terms of diligencing and making sure that it is a genuine, real opportunity. But I guess that's a completely separate discussion. So have a look online for small business for sale. There are also websites like flippa.com, FLIPPA.com, which specialize really in websites that are for sale. And you also have companies like EmpireFlippers.com, which I also hear good things about. So you can source a lot of these opportunities online, and also keep an ear out offline as well, because there'll be people in your network that might have these types of small businesses, and you could potentially do a deal with them. And remember the thing I said about distressed sellers as well, because sometimes if somebody is really distressed, they might say to you that, look, take the business, take over the running, and pay me back from the profits of the business. So you could actually pick up a business without any capital outlay. You just need to take over the operations.
That's really interesting stuff, Mohsin. So for people who are thinking, hang on a minute, I don't have 150 grand. If I had 150 grand, then I wouldn't need a side income. I mean, and I know that that you picked up your businesses for 5, 10, 15, 20 grand, right? Which I think is much more affordable for people. So do you want to kind of talk about what where you bought your business, what kind of things you were looking for, and how you went about doing your due diligence? Because the other thing is, how do I know if Gary from Oldham, who's selling me some kind of shoemaking business, is actually he's legit or not?
Yeah, good questions. So the businesses that I've bought have ranged from they're all sub 50k. And in terms of where I found them, there are loads of websites online. So if you search like, I don't know, small businesses for sale, you'll see companies like Dalton's Business. You'll see like Right Biz. You'll see a whole host of them. And the key with them, it's hard because the actual good opportunities that come up are relatively rare. But in terms of diligencing, I think I look for a few key things. I think the very, very key thing to look at, just like on the face of it, is does this look like a good, genuine, sustainable business? So you'll see like a lot of listings like, oh, startup website, start making money tomorrow, £1,000, it's all fully set up and ready to go. That's not like a running, genuine business that's been making money for 20 years. That's relying on you not knowing enough about web design and basically shelling out £1,000 for just a shell website. So you need to look first. Is this a genuine opportunity? Has this person said things like, "Oh, we've had this for 20 years. These are, the profit figures." You may not get the profit figures on the initial listing. You'll have to kind of inquire about that. But you should be able to get a sense of, is this just a legit business? Does it sound like it's a legit business? That's kind of the sense check number one. Sense check number two is when you kind of ask for more information from the broker, you should be asking things like, why is the sell, like, who are the sellers? Why are they selling? And you should also get a sense of the accounts as well. So just look at the actual numbers. And when you look at the numbers, you should be able to see consistently over the last maybe 3 years or so that revenues are pretty steady, profit figures are pretty steady. Don't be put off by declining revenues because sometimes owners they get tired and they get bored and they stop putting effort into their business. But you can turn these things around quite quickly, and actually that's your opportunity, right? And the other key thing is just understand the sellers. So if you get to the point where you then enter into a discussion with the sellers, you might do an initial kind of due diligence call. I spend probably the first 15 minutes of that call just understanding the seller, because once you understand the seller, it helps your relationship with them. It helps you to understand their motivations for selling, and it means then that when if it does come to you giving an offer for this business, you can structure it in a way that works for them. If, to give my earlier example, if I'm moving to Australia in 2 months and I just want my hands on the cash, there's no point saying to me that, oh, let's do a deal where I pay installments over 12 months, because it's not going to work for me. I'd rather take a lower figure and have the cash up front. So you need to understand that kind of thing. And then it's a case really of delving deeper into the financials, maybe speaking to an accountant or somebody that can give you a good sense check of these things, and then firing over all your due diligence questions. Just make sure you understand the business from top to bottom, so that if you were to take over the business tomorrow, you fully understand what's going on.
Brilliant. There are a whole bunch of questions around this whole topic, and I want to kind of crack on, and then inshallah we'll pick this up towards the end. And actually, if you guys want, and if you're interested in it, we have been mulling over doing some kind of course around this whole business area and how to go about buying these things, and I don't know, some kind of, I don't know, you tell us if you think it's helpful. You tell us if we should be doing something in more detail around this, and we're happy to do that. But another kind of strategy. So the first strategy was buy yourself a small business. Maybe buy something 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 grand, and then hope to make somewhere like 10 to 20, 30 grand out of it per year as an additional revenue source. But obviously, you should very much be cognizant that it will be hard work. And all of the things that we're going to say here will be hard work. It's not going to be easy money. There is no such thing really as easy money, at least for the long term. It might be for a short-term period of time, but then after that, it's hard work. So the second strategy is to skill up so that you are ready to set up some kind of online consultancy, some kind of online business of your own. So what I mean by that is, there are, me and Mohsin obviously run Islamic Finance Guru now full time, and we have had to hire so many different people and learn so many different skills as an online business, which is where the future is these days, that you will not believe. We've had to learn how to do web design, or hire people who know how to do web design, coding, software engineering, web development, being able to create aesthetically pleasing graphics, SEO, which is search engine optimization, people who are good at social media campaigns, people who can put you in touch with key influencers, people who are good at PR and have good networks there, people who are good at Facebook and Google ads, and how that whole space works. The list goes on and on and on. There is so much out there that these days that all of us can pick up and actually just develop a full-time successful business in. That it's just such a vast opportunity right now. Like, when you go down a high street and you see Debenhams and the Woolworths and all of these kind of Marks and Spencers making cuts or closing down, what is actually happening here? People are not going around stark naked anymore. There is still buying and selling happening. It's all just happening online. And there's a revolution that's taking place where people are coming online. And for that revolution, it needs a new class of worker. And the class of worker that it needs is all of those kind of things that I just mentioned, those and more. So I guess what I'm saying is that have a look on things like Skillshare, and there's a whole bunch of Coursera and other websites like that where you can go online and learn lots of things for very cheap or for free, and get cracking in those fields. And it'll probably take you about 3 to 6 months, 6 months worth of really dedicated work for you to really get anywhere in this space. But once you do, you might do some free work as internships, or even just volunteer for a business and just add value to that business by doing free work for them. Once you do that stuff, then you actually have a half decent business here, and it's completely flexible. You're a consultant, you can do it in your own time. And I know people who set up a consultancy business and who run successful consultancy businesses during university, doing coding in particular. They got so big that they had to hire a team out in India, and the guy made, I think he was making 200K a year, and he's a university student. And he wasn't even born in this country. Like, he came across here and he had to work hard, and mashallah, he's done really well for himself. So with a bit of hard work, with a bit of tenacity, and with a bit of luck and dua, I think there's a huge potential here for people who are willing to stick it out.
Yeah, just to extend on that, just from a pure practical point of view, if you're thinking about any of these things, generally speaking, like all these consultancy gigs, the easiest thing I think is to go for like web-based stuff. So like pretty much all the stuff that Ibrahim was on about, SEO and this, that, and the other. And like the certifications are pretty cheap to free. Like I think Google have a whole suite of things that you can learn. And you can pretty much become like a Google certified expert in Google Ads or Google Analytics or whatever it might be. And they do that because they want to keep perpetuating their own products in the market. That's why they do it. But for your purposes, it means that you've then got the grounding to be able to go to businesses and say, look, I know what I'm doing in this area. Do you need any help? And I'm thinking in particular that all the kind of offline businesses that are in and around your area. So think about all the accountancy practices around you, all the dentists, all the all these high street businesses that are still going, who have or may have owners that don't necessarily have a web presence or don't really know what they're doing. You can take you can very quickly develop a stable of clients, and you're making $1,000, a couple of grand, $5,000 a month, just from these side gigs.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it also helps with your own job as well, because let's say you might think, oh, I work at this for 3 to 6 months and I don't really get anywhere with it. I mean, what a waste of time. No, it's not. It's in this day and age, if you can do a bit of web design, if you can do a bit of this, that, and the other, to complement what you're already doing, that's massive. That's a real value add to a business. Like, I know when we interview people to hire them, and they've got like they've got coding ability, or they've got some other extra ability like design, we really like that, because we know how expensive and how much of a headache it can otherwise be. So yeah, definitely one to consider. And you know what, this would be probably my second option. Like, if I was back at work, and I was scared that I might get laid off, then I think this would be my second option for a side income. In terms of the ones that I've given, this would be my second option. My first option would actually be our third strategy, which is use your existing skills and work as a consultant by moonlighting. Mohsin, do you want to kind of shed a bit more light on this strategy?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, for those of you who are in skilled jobs, there is a significant opportunity to kind of, the thought has probably already crossed your mind about kind of doing your own thing, right? So if you're a practicing solicitor, accountant, tax advisor, I don't know, dentist, whatever it may be, there are opportunities where you can basically do the same thing yourself. For some professions, you can't really moonlight, for, it might be kind of regulatory reasons or all kinds of reasons. But for many professions, if you're a software engineer, if you're a web developer, you're a, I don't know, video editor at a company or something like that, these are all things that, if you've got people that are willing to pay you, you can do them in your evenings and weekends. And I know that, we did some of this back when we were lawyers. And I think often people get a bit worried about moonlighting because it's kind of frowned upon. But I think our view on it is that as long as it's legal, and as long as you are doing the best service by your clients, so you've got the necessary kind of company structures in place, and you've got, if it's if you're an accountant or something, then you've got the relevant indemnity insurance and stuff like that, then I don't see any reason why you wouldn't start building up your stable of clients, because that's the thing which, if you wanted to, later down the line could lead you to setting up your own firm. I mean, we know somebody, for example, who was at one of the big four accountancy firms. He spent probably the last couple of years or so just slowly building up a sideline. And, I think just last week he left his full-time job, because he's now got the confidence to be able to do that, having spent kind of 2 years developing that business development side of things and having the confidence to go out and get clients. So I think moonlighting is a really good way to kind of get started on your entrepreneurship journey as well.
For sure, for sure. And I mean, we did it ourselves, right, for a number of years, doing random like legal consultancy gigs. And it's I think it's a great way of harnessing your skill set, but also harnessing the networks and the resources you have. Like when you're a junior lawyer, doing your own gig on the side, it just is very helpful to have a whole law firm at your disposal, in terms of people that you can ask questions and books that you can read and what have you. So I think I think it develops you in your career as well, interestingly enough, because you're then for the first time managing clients, which typically you wouldn't be really allowed to do yourself until you're much more senior. So I think it's really helpful from that perspective as well. And also I think you're in your profession for a reason, right? Typically you like it or you're good at it. So it makes sense. And I think that's the one I would probably go for if I went for it. Then we've got strategy number 4, which is developing a side business. So let me update this so that the screen, so you can see it. And this is one that is very close to our heart, right? Because IFG essentially was this. And when we say a side business, I mean, how is this different from an online consultancy or moonlighting and what have you? All of these things are side businesses. What I mean by a side business is just something very different to a consultancy, something very different to selling your time for money, and actually doing a full-on business that is different to that, selling some kind of product where it's not necessarily you selling time and services. It's much more selling stuff. There are many examples that I can think of. For example, people in my family are selling stuff on Amazon. That is a side business because it's not really a consultancy. They've gone ahead and created a product on the internet, and then worked with people in China to produce it, and then worked with the Amazon sellers platform, and got that whole thing integrated fully. So now they're just selling on Amazon, and it's fairly low touch from their perspective. And then with IFG and many other blog entrepreneurs, if you want to think of them that way, that's another really viable strategy. So what do I mean by blog entrepreneurs? Well, people who have a passion for a particular area, and they write about it, they do videos on it, they're really interested in this particular niche area, and they become an authority in it after a while. And then after a while, because they have a niche audience that really respects them and appreciates what they're doing, and they think that there is value in what they're up to, they get a whole range of monetizing opportunities. So to give you an example, CoinDesk is a Bitcoin and cryptocurrency website, and the way they monetize, they've got a whole lot of content around cryptocurrency, and that brings lots of traffic to them. But the way they monetize is they then create events, or they might carry some ads, or they might do some kind of cryptocurrency course. There's so many different ways that they can really effectively monetize once they have that audience and they have that traffic. And to do this sort of thing will take a bit of time, because you need time to write this content, you need time for the reputation to bed in, but you need time for you to learn as well what you're up to. Sure. A good question by no 512. I like your name. Although I think it should be yes 512. It's a good question from you on what can you do if your employment contract restricts moonlighting and requires you to obtain approval from board of directors, and I guess it might also restrict you from doing a side business or anything. Now, I've been lucky in that my contracts have not said that, which was amazing, very, very lucky. There are a few different ways of going about this. The first is you get lucky. The second is you have a chat with the relevant people and just make them aware. If you think that it's going to materially impact on your work. And the third is, I think that you're just doing it in your own time on the weekends and what have you. It's nothing to do with work, and you just kind of treat it that way. Now, if it becomes significantly large and it does start impeding on work, then of course you need to have that conversation. But I think with this whole thing, maybe another principle to chuck in is be brave. This is what being an entrepreneur is about. Like, I have had to be on. I love this story, and Mohsin has heard this many times. He knows what's coming. I've been at times on the TfL rail into work with two mobile phones to my ears, with Mohsin leading a call on one and me on mute, and a senior guy at work leading a call on the other and me on mute on both, and just going into work, and people in the tube station and the TfL rail were thinking, what on earth is this guy? And of course, that's the point where it's unsustainable, right? That's the point where you have to make a decision, and that's where we ultimately decided we were going to go full-time on Islamic Finance Guru. But actually, we were doing all sorts of side hustles from 2016 onwards up to 2019, 2020, when we actually quit. And believe you me, there is genuinely not really an issue, and I don't think that, and I think that you shouldn't make it too big an issue, both internally within the business, but also in your own head, right? Because that, I think, puts a lot of pressure on it. I think you just I think there's an attitude type thing as well with entrepreneurship, where you're naturally going to be taking a bit of risk. You're going to have to be a bit more punchy, a bit optimistic, and that needs to permeate absolutely everything that you do. Now, if you work for a small law firm or a small company, and you're moonlighting and going into direct competition with them, then of course I think there's clear conflicts there, and that would be, I think, unethical to do without actually telling them. Now, if you're, if for example you're doing a side business where you do a bit of art or you do wedding photography, I just don't see why that would be at all an issue. I think use your common sense and use your judgment, but it's something that is very much surmountable. Mohsin, any other thoughts on setting up a side business and what people should be doing when they go about this?
Yeah, I think with the side business stuff, I think that uh, pretty much as we were saying before, the thing to remember is that these things do take time. You can't, depending on what it is, let's say it's a website or something, you can't expect that day one people are going to be visiting in their droves, and you are going to have to put work in. You're going to have to speak to people around you, and that's one really big bit of advice I think is talk to people who've been there and done it. Because they can mentor you through it. Those first like 2 months of setting up a website where you get like 5 visitors or something like that, and you're buzzing that you break into 10 visitors a day, and we've been there. Those moments are difficult to kind of stick with in the long term, but you just have to have confidence that these things do snowball, and as long as you've got something there, then inshallah it will do well. And the key really is finding those people. They might be in your own network, they might be online. There are online communities for people who are selling on Shopify or Amazon and things like that. And probably one of the things that I'd advise is embedding yourself in those communities so you can actually hear from the people how hard this actually is, and they can kind of give you the moral support as well.
For sure. The other thing I would say is try and own the full stack of your business. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is, if you are running a business on Instagram, or you're running a business primarily on Facebook or YouTube or even Amazon, fulfilled by Amazon, you are beholden to those larger organizations. They control your wallet, right? If they decide to change the algorithm one day, as Facebook did, right? People have hundreds of thousands of fans on Facebook, but actually their reach these days is, pitiable. It's not very much at all. And at the moment, LinkedIn is going strong, Instagram is going strong. It's very viral because LinkedIn and Instagram want to allow people to come onto their platform and gain lots of users. But ultimately, these guys will clamp down on this stuff, and once they have a certain number of users, they'll want to monetize, and then you'll have to pay for everything, and you won't get much viral reach, much organic reach. And the same is the case with YouTube, and how something happens one day and it's just all over. And the way to get around this issue is by probably a couple of things. One is by diversifying your channels of getting people onto your website or onto your product or onto your sales page or whatever it is you're driving them towards. The second is by capturing their emails and making sure that you have a robust email list, because email lists are ultimately the best way in which you can have a direct relationship and contact with your audience. Without them, you're going to really ultimately struggle. So realize that early and kind of make sure that you do that. And then I think the other thing to be said around small businesses is that you should experiment, because it's going to take a bit of time to really click on in terms of what actually works. So this is not something that you can necessarily rely on 100% to be an income generator within 2-3 months. It might be, but the likelihood is that it's going to be something that you plug away at for about a year or two before it really starts kicking off. But then when it does, it has the potential to be much bigger than all the consultancy stuff. And you might want to do like a hybrid approach, which we did, where we were doing a bit of consultancy stuff, but also working on a small business, which was, IFG, although we didn't think of it as a business at the time. You could do that kind of approach where you bring in some money in one way, but you allow yourself the headroom to be able to work on things that could make more money long term. So let's turn now to our fifth strategy, which is investing strategies for income. Mohsin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I guess this is another one where it kind of needs that initial capital. But if you're somebody who, there very well may be these circumstances where if people are employed and they're being made redundant, particularly if you've been with your employer for a long period of time, you may get a very, very decent redundancy package. Or, generally speaking, for whatever reason, you may have a whole bunch of capital sat in your bank, and you kind of you want to start thinking about how can I effectively deploy that money so that it's not just sat in my bank, but it's actually generating some sort of income for me, whilst I'm also looking at all of these other things as well. And when it comes to investments that generate an income, I think that there are some pretty classic ones. So things like a buy-to-let property, that is a very, very classic approach for using existing capital to generate a long-term income for you, because the idea is that with a buy-to-let property, you can put down the deposit, you can get the rest on an Islamic mortgage, and you can pay off the Islamic mortgage through the rental income that comes in. And by the end of the term of the mortgage, you've actually got yourself the asset fully owned, fully paid for, and the only capital that you ever put out there was the deposit, so 20-25% or whatever it may be. So that is a very classic income strategy, and I guess there historically has been some debate about whether when it comes to buy to let you should go for residential stuff, so things that people live in, houses, or should you go for commercial property, so places where businesses will lease from you. So think about, for example, the premises that your local takeaway is in, or I don't know, like a car garage, or the actual freehold of those properties where businesses are leasing from you. And my opinion on this, I've never really dabbled that much in property, but my opinion on this has always been that commercial property is really where the strength is, because um, the guarantees are just much better. It's likely that you've got a better tenant in there, somebody who's actually got a business. You can get them on a fully repaired and insured lease, meaning that you can tie them to the fact that they have to, for example, paint and decorate the place every year and things like that, and do that with residential property, because there are certain laws that protect tenants, because of course it's human lives that we're talking about. But nowadays, with the whole COVID situation, maybe that's a bit different. Maybe people are looking to move out of commercial premises. We know that there'll be a lot of small businesses that will close down, etc., etc. So it might be time to revisit the whole residential versus commercial approach. But buy to let as a blanket kind of tool is definitely something that people can consider. And then I'm sure you've got some ideas as well. But one other thought I had, Ibrahim, was about stocks as well. So you can pick up shares on the stock market, and these companies will pay you a dividend for owning those stocks. So classic dividend payers include companies like Shell, who before this year had actually never cut their dividend since World War II, but this year they actually have. And the pros of investing in stocks for dividend income are that it's completely passive. So unlike property, where you need to go there, you need to check on the property, you may need to repair it. You don't need to ever do anything with shares, right? You just own them and money comes in. So that's definitely the big pro. I guess the con is that it's slightly riskier in that you don't really control the company. I mean, you should be checking the financial ratios to make sure they've got enough money in the bank to be paying these dividends anyway. But there is still some risk there to their trading conditions. And there is a risk that the dividend may be cut either by a certain amount, or they might just cut it completely if they want to preserve cash. So yeah, those would be my two thoughts: property as well as stocks. I don't know if you've got any additional ones, Ibrahim.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. I think what I wanted to mention here was, what kind of numbers are we looking at in terms of if this is actually a viable strategy for you, particularly when it comes to stocks and day trading. So day trading is where you're going in and you're actually just trading some stocks every day, and making a little bit of profit, and then hopefully over time that builds up. The first thing to be said with day trading is you're probably going to have to spend 6 months really, really hard work actually learning it. And even then, if you don't have the aptitude for it, the right psychology for it, you might not be right for it. Not everyone can be a trader. It is possible though. People do it, and they do it successfully, and it is permissible as long as you're investing only in permissible assets. So, but when can you actually do it? So I think to do it viably, the number in my head is 100,000. And the reason why I say 100,000 is because you want to be never really putting more than, I think, 5% of your entire portfolio into a single trade. So that gives you a maximum of 5 grand, and probably you want to start off even less than that most of the time. And then with 5 grand, what you're going to see, what maximum movements of 10%. So it's not like massive amounts of money. You're talking about maybe 250, 500 quid. But that's significant enough for you to be able to counteract all of the brokerage fees that you paid going in and out. So like 10 quid in, 10 quid out, that's 20 quid right there. So you need to have a little bit of an investment up front for it to make sense. And then you think, okay, well, I need to make about 500 to 1,000 to 2,000 a month as a side hustle to kind of make it worth it for me. And it's going to be something that I do between 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. It's a bit tricky, is my kind of view on all of this. Day trading. Whereas if you do swing trading, where you're holding for like a week or 2 weeks, that I think is more viable, because you don't need to necessarily be sat at the desk between 9 to 5, and you can actually work. But even there, I think you need a substantial amount of income, a substantial amount of savings, sorry, for it to make sense. I'm thinking there you probably want to have at least 20. Maybe you can get away with something like 10 to 15, but I think at least 20 would make sense. And then the other thing is, like, this is now income that you're going to be using up. This is a side income. So your pot of money that you use to trade won't actually grow, because you're just going to be taking that money away. So you'll always be kind of stuck in this kind of rut. So my instinctive thoughts are, don't try and trade your way or invest your way necessarily out of a full-time job, or think of it as a side hustle. I think property, as Mohsin said, would probably be the best option because it's so hands off. I'm very conscious of the time, Mohsin, but I guess the final thing to perhaps touch upon quickly is the gig economy, and then we can take questions for the last 4 minutes or so. So maybe if I come to you, Mohsin, for a minute on the gig economy.
Sure, yeah. So the gig economy, I'm sure everybody's heard of the concept, and the idea is that really, truly, and simply, there for people who maybe don't have the kind of skilled profession that they can take onto a consultancy. So if you're not like an accountant or a lawyer or whatever it might be, pretty much anyone, as long as you can drive, can do things like Uber Eats, Deliveroo. There's also a company that we came across recently called Adondo, I think it was, whereby you can basically become a call center agent, and like an outsourced call center agent. And there are a whole bunch of things like this where you can basically pick it up. You might have a period of training, but broadly speaking, it's effectively a second job. And to be honest, from what I understand, it can pay fairly decently as well. So if it's great if you're in a particularly tight spot, and you can actually do these things, then definitely worth considering Uber and Uber Eats and all those kinds of things too.
Yeah, you're doing well as a taxi driver when you have to register for VAT, which is like 70, or is it 75, 85 or something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
So that's mashallah, our taxi drivers are doing well. So next time that Uber Eats driver turns up late, then don't treat him with respect anyway, because it's a good thing to do, but also know that he might well be earning more than you as well. So there we are. Right, over to you guys for your questions. So Mohsin, if I go back to um, a lot of businesses are selling due to COVID. What are your thoughts on this? Small businesses.
I'm not. I guess they are. I've not particularly seen that on the market just yet. If they are, then I think that's an opportunity. I think that that's for us as buyers to understand whether that's a good purchase or not. COVID has done a lot of things. One thing it certainly has done is thrown up a lot of opportunities. So if you are in a position to buy a business which is fundamentally sound, but the seller for whatever reason is distressed, that's an opportunity as far as I'm concerned. Having said that, if it's a business which is fundamentally affected by COVID, so I don't know, I'm talking about things like, I don't know, if you're a supplier into schools or something like that, it might be one to kind of hold off on. Or maybe not. If you're particularly punchy, it might be a great opportunity as well. It's one of those, isn't it? Risk is always proportionate to reward. So it's like the saying from Warren Buffett is that the best time to be buying stuff is when there's blood on the streets or something like that.
Yeah, like the CoinDesk example I was giving, how they became a great multi-million business, multi-million pound business on the basis of events. They were actually sold for about, I think was it 500K, and that was a big loss for the person selling. But ultimately, they went on to do millions within the first year because they just pivoted, use their existing business to then do events. So there are opportunities where the previous owners might not necessarily see it. Khadija asks, what companies would be confirmed as a halal stock option? So Khadija, for this, you should check out our halal. You type in halal stock screening Islamic Finance Guru on the internet. You will come across a whole load of stuff that we've done on it on Google. So that's what I would recommend. But in a nutshell, yeah, it needs to be halal. What else do we have? Don Yasser asks, do you recommend eToro as a platform? I think it now does allow you to invest directly in stocks, which is good because that's permissible. But eToro as a platform, I have mixed feelings about because of their really strong links with forex, derivatives, CFDs, dodgy practices generally, and they're not necessarily the best loved from the regulator's perspective either. So I don't know, I think if you're going for that to them, for a reason such as they allow you to trade for cheap, then I would consider alternatives like what is it, Trading 212, or Degiro is another one that you can look at as well. Degiro. Great. What else do we have? Oh God, there's a whole load of questions now. Where have we gone? What are your thoughts on franchising, Mohsin? What are your thoughts on franchising?
Franchising is good, can be good. I think it depends on a few things. Depends on the quality of the actual franchise. I think if you can find a good franchise, it's a great way of getting into like business owner mentality and business owner chapter in your life. The only thing to bear in mind with franchising is, on one hand, it makes things really easy because you don't have to worry too much about branding, marketing. Your hand is kind of held all the way through. The cons of it are that you're going to be tied into that ecosystem and you're going to be paying a fee, a franchise fee annually. So there'll be investment you have to make up front. There'll be percentages on your sales and all that kind of thing. But they can be very good investments. Like I know people that own, for example, several Subway franchises and stuff like that, and they're pretty hands off. They just have staff managing it, and it's a great income for them. And of course, like the big franchises, so things like McDonald's and stuff like that, there are highly successful people who own those. So yeah, franchising overall, I would say it's a good thing. Depends really on the quality of the franchise.
Makes sense. A brother was asking about whether or not there's bridge providers available. If you go on our Islamic mortgages page, you'll find some halal bridging loan providers. Offer is the name of the company, but you can find the link there. My question is around Lola. Okay, asks. My question is around how to access halal funds to start these business ideas. Ah, that's the tricky one, isn't it, Lola? With obviously with startups, we do invest in startups. That's a very different category to what we're talking about here. Honestly, this is one that we want to be able to help people on, and we're trying to work out a way to do it most effectively ourselves because we know that there's a need for this. But we're also only two people, so we can only do so much. And we don't want to do lots of things and do all of them badly. But I guess leave this with us. We're still thinking on a way to effectively do this. But in the interim, Lola, I think that you probably got a couple of strategies. One is friends and family. The other one is go for a business that doesn't need that much startup capital. And there are many actually, consultancy, selling your services and your time. And then the third is credit cards. So we're of the view that as long as you're confident that you'll be able to you'll be able to pay off the credit card without necessarily having to pay any interest on it, then we would be comfortable for you to take that out. But I wouldn't, just as good practice, I wouldn't recommend that as a first option by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, Isfandiar has a great idea about doing online courses. For a side job, is there a certain amount you can earn before registering with HMRC as self-employed? What are your thoughts?
I check on this, but I think it might be £1,000. But check that. Don't take that as gospel, please.
Yeah. Who shouldn't look towards side income or investing? I'm not sure. Everyone should look towards side income or investing.
Anyone who doesn't need money.
Mohsin, what was the name of the call center side gig you mentioned? I missed the name. Odondo. I've mentioned it somewhere in the chat as well. Interesting guys. Yeah, there we go. Mohammed Nasir Rashidi is absolutely on it. He's from Oldham, and he's coming across as an absolute legend. Mohsin, what kind of business have you bought, or how much time do you spend managing each? Can it be done with a full-time job?
So the businesses I've bought, one is like a medical supplies business that we bought from this old guy who'd kind of built it up over the last like 10, 15 years in his retirement. And the other one is a wedding favors business. So yeah, I mean, my wife runs them, so I don't really have any input there other than kind of getting her up to speed initially. But now she's kind of running with it, so it doesn't really need me. So I think the key thing with those is that if you are going to do it alongside a full-time job, either have someone running it that you know, whether that's a family member or whoever it may be, or have the systems in place such that you might need to take like a few weeks off work or something, but you're then going to employ somebody to basically take over the day-to-day, and maybe you can just oversee in the evenings or whatever what's going on. Very much depends on the business, really.
Sure. Jazakallah khair for that. Is Forex not permissible? Anas, we've recently done a YouTube video on this, so do check that out. Inshallah, that'll answer your questions. The answer is no, it's not permissible. Granada Communications, thoughts on Sarwan Wahid? We like them from a stocks perspective. Solid options. You can go for DIY, do it yourself. You can go for Wahid and Sarwa. Or you could go for like an in the middle thing where you kind of do it by yourself, but you also invest in funds via AJ Bell or Hargreaves Lansdowne or whatever broker you use to set up an account. What else have we got? Forex isn't, but crypto is. Crypto is largely permissible. We're actually in the middle of doing a full-on guide to crypto from a Sharia compliance and investment perspective in the next few weeks. So do watch out for that. It'll be our standard kind of quite detailed guide, inshallah. So hopefully it will be very useful. Ridwan, yep, it will be available on Google, on YouTube. All of the live videos stay on YouTube. Do you think properties will go down in value? If so, better to wait before considering buy to let. So I think when people are the most fearful, as Mohsin said, is probably the best time to be buying. So I think the people in the know in the property space that I know are looking for bargains now, but I expect there to be more bargains in Q1, Q2 next year, because that's when everyone's completely ran out of money. All the government supports completely ran out. And that's when people start defaulting and you see lots of bargains come onto the market. And property is property. I mean, it's ultimately hold its value, even if it goes down a little bit long term. If you're investing in it for income, it doesn't really make much of a difference. All right, great. I think we better wrap it up because I'm horribly late on something else, and maybe we should be doing these more regularly, these webinars. If you guys have benefited, enjoyed this, then please do let us know by hitting the like button, just so that we know that there is actually appetite for doing these webinars more regularly, and we can definitely do that, inshallah. Until next time, assalamu alaikum from us, and do remember us in your du'as, and get your side incomes going, and drop us a line on Twitter, or drop us a line on our website, and or even in the comments below on what you get up to. We'd love to hear from the more successful people, and perhaps get you guys onto the webinar or podcast yourself, so that people can learn from your success stories, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.